I am Edward Archdale. My father was in the 7th Airborne Battalion, the 6th Airborne Division. He, as a 20-year-old, landed just south, I got it right, of the Pegasus Bridge on the night of this, or early hours, the 6th of June. He jumped out of the plane as a junior lieutenant and landed as a captain because all his fellow officers were killed. And whereupon their duties was to relieve the ox and bucks who had landed by gliders. And they, according to him, had a relatively easy battle. The real battle started when Lord parachute boys relieved them because the Germans regrouped and they were determined to take the bridge back. And my father's lot were told, hold the bridge until the relief columns arrived. They had fierce battles through the night and all the next day, and ended up by being my father and 10 other men on the bridge holding it together, and they were preparing for what they thought was going to be their last battle with the Germans, when my father suddenly recognized the British helmets coming up the road, and it was the commanders arriving from the beaches. And there was a major sigh of relief, I think, at that time. But I will say my father was never said much about it. I think a lot of his generation were like that. They didn't talk about it. But he took all his grandchildren to go and see the Pegasus Bridge and where he went in Normandy. And he suddenly opened up. Because I think one of the first questions when they were standing by the river was, where did you kill your first German grandpa? And that literally opened him up. And he started talking about it. We never ventured much further with my father, but he did do a transcript on his journey from getting in the airplane to ending the war up in the Baltic, partying with the Russians. He did jump twice more on his trip up there. His whole journey was like fast. Their rations and equipment never ever caught up with them because they were traveling so quick in that time. But he always said this was the most exciting time of his life. But he said he knew nothing else. He left school straight into the army, he joined the Rifle Brigade first, and then volunteered for the parachute regiment straight away. And never looked back on that. He eventually came home in 1947. One of his final things, he sent out to Malaya to practice getting ready to jump into Japan. And they were very grateful that the bomb was dropped. That never happened. But then he was sent back to Palestine to sort out the Israelis who, at the time, as he called them, devils. And they had quite a tough time with that. And then he came back to the United Kingdom. And he was one of the incredibly lucky ones who went through the whole war without an injury, except for he had a bit of grit went into his eye on his first 24 hours, but he said a lovely lady, French lady in the house came out, washed his eye, then disappeared inside, said, when you're ready, come and have a drink. That he remained firm friends with Arlette, who owns the Pegasus Cafe, and which I go back every year. And I used to go with my father for a long time, back to Pegasus for the D-Day celebrations.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm curious about what he then went on to do after he came back.
Became a farmer.
A farmer or a father?
Farmer.
All right.
Well, father a bit later on. No, he had. He's always He was actually born and bred in what's now Zimbabwe. And he came after school, he went straight into the army, into the parachute regiment. Then after the war, he had his mother's greatest friend had farms in just outside Mold, and he became one of her tellers, and then eventually ended up buying, when his mother's friend died, he ended up scrimping and scraping and bought what we farmed. And he said, although he could have farmed out in Zimbabwe, but he wanted to stay in the United Kingdom. And he went on, did great works for the farming industry, of which it was his passion. And when he was in the parachute regiment, it was his passion at the time. And his great friends became the Field Marshal Bramwell was one of his great friends who was in the regiment with him. Richard Todd, the actor, was one of his great friends in the parachute regiment. He and Richard Todd were actually, both of them, on Pegasus Bridge. Both parachuted. Firstly, he would do it again if it meant the freedom, and we do what we do now. And one of the things he's always saying, these people who complain about what the soldiers do makes it cross, because without them, they wouldn't, without the boys who fought the war, they wouldn't have that freedom to do what they do now, whether it be protest march or anything they do. And they gave, a lot of them gave their lives. Every year, when I used to go with my father, we'd go to 2 or 3 of these churchyards, and there's one particular little churchyard just outside Caen. And every time, as soon as we go there, there's one particular grave he would go to, and he would stand in front of it, and he was very bent by the last time we went, he was 95, and he was bent double. But in front of this grave, he was able to stand dead straight. And I said, why do you come to this grave every year and salute it? And his reply was, this man taught me everything, which is quite humbling. And especially when you see all these graves of his and their ages, and they're also incredibly young, never saw anything, but they gave their life for the freedom of this country.